Bonjour and welcome to the Grand Prix podcast! Woo-hoo! This week, the F1 circus has landed in Monaco. This track goes way back, all the way to 1950, the beginning of F1 itself. It's seen decades of incredible racing and has become a legend in its own right. Set in the streets of Monte Carlo, the track winds through a luxurious backdrop of yachts, casinos and architecture. Winning Monaco means mastering the most unforgiving, prestigious and glamorous race in motorsport. It's not just a victory, it's a statement. As Enzo Ferrari once said, a win in Monaco is worth half a championship. But even legends need a glow-up, right? Races in Monaco are known for being a bit of a procession, with overtaking being incredibly difficult. But this year, the FIA are shaking things up, with 2 mandatory pit stops to keep the action baked into the race. And that's not all. As Pirelli are bringing their softest tyres in their range, it's clear F1 wants to ensure the spectacle of Monaco thrills fans across the world. And as the sport continues to attract a younger audience, and Monaco's trying to be the rejuvenated, cool and exciting new girl on the calendar, I've got an intro that matches that Gen Z energy Monaco is really trying to aim for. So, ChatGPT, let's Monaco!
Good God, what is this intro going to be?
Okay, besties, skibbity the gossip, we're in Monaco Bay. Aura unmatched, it's rich course sleigh all day. It's giving soft launch yacht with a sprinkle of fear, like one bad turn and it's help, I can't steer. These streets built like trauma, tight, confusing and fast. Swerve wrong once and you'll be a meme that won't last. Boom, wall hits different, like your toxic ex-text. Not cute, not fetch, just girl, what's next? McLaren's the vibe, made char with law. Aura so loud it walks in before they score. Rebel in their sleigh era, no cap. Literally speedrunning life, lap after lap. Grab your Stanley, your claw clip and your vibe. This GP, it's not a sport, it's a whole lifestyle tribe. We're serving helmet hair and high-key thrills. This race got more twists than Netflix kills. We're breaking it down like engines on lap 10. This pod certified sleigh, say it again. Or immaculate drama on cue. Skibbity F1, that's the T, and it's true.
Wow. Wow. I have no words.
Thank you so much. Anyway.
So when did you sign a record deal?
I don't think you've ever outed yourself as a millennial as much as you have now.
I haven't.
She said skibbity, hello, she's clearly Gen Alpha.
And the way she said it, she definitely sounds millennial.
Your energy's wiggity wiggity whack.
Just so the listeners know, Iz has been teasing this intro for about a week now, and she wouldn't tell us what it's about. And it's something.
Yeah, and then Reem
slays all day.
And then Reem said, oh, is it Disney themed? Because they just signed a partnership with F1. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense.
You could have been starting this intro like, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Grand Prix podcast.
But I went a different route. And I think we're all very happy with the outcome. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff.
Can't wait for that to be a social clip.
No! They have to work hard if they want to hear that. I'm not letting it onto the internet.
Well, that was sick, bro. What next?
Oh, no. Oh, is that what I sounded like? That was cringe. Oh, no. She only said 2 lines. I said about 18. Oh, no.
I don't know how to talk like that. It's so out of my comfort zone.
You just have to slay, Queen.
Ew. We all need to stop. Okay. You've reflected back to me what I've just done and I hated it. Okay, my bad. Should I just do a new intro?
No.
No. Keep it.
It's obviously staying.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Izzy, for a wonderful intro. You're so welcome. You're so gorgeous. So are you. Okay.
Should we just put an end to this and say let's just...
I wasn't sure if that was on pod or not. I thought you said that off the record.
No, that's on pod. Should we just...
I wasn't sure if she's saying an end to this episode or end to you on the podcast.
Your understudy is waiting.
Okay, Flavie Birds, all right.
I own every interview. And therefore
Pause.
I would...
Wild.
And therefore I would like to just get cracking with your quali lap.
Sure.
Okay, so Lando Norris put his McLaren on pole position.
New track record as well.
Yes,
so it wasn't just an impressive lap, it was a
very impressive lap.
Oh, this is not going to go well.
Good luck to you, though, new track records.
What?
Good luck to you, because it means that your roundup would be a lot shorter.
Yeah, your roundup is going to be 1 minute and 9 seconds.
What?
Yeah.
What?
And there was a lot of stuff happening in quali, so praise be.
Did you say a Handmaid's Tale reference in that? That's not okay.
Nothing about the start of this pod has been okay.
Yeah, but mine was more playful than that. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you steady?
Yeah.
Blessed be the fruit. Kick it.
Right. Ferrari started strong, but Max was a rocket, second the fastest time as lap times tumbled. Leclerc, Verstappen and Norris and Piastri traded times for the top. Hamilton clawed his way into Q2, but was noted for impeding Verstappen. A late yellow for Antonelli's crash saw Bortoleto, Behrman, Gasly, Stroll and Colapinto out. Q2 was a session for twists and turns with 2 red flags for Antonelli's shunt and Russell's sudden power loss. McLaren and Ferrari duelled for P1. The last-minute flurry of purple sector from Hadjar and Albon knocked out Sainz, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg and Russell Antonelli. Lawson made a well-deserved Q3 debut. Q3 was a nail-biter. McLaren looked dominant early, but Leclerc took P1, but Norris delivered a blistering lap, setting a new track record and stealing pole by 15 milliseconds. Verstappen settled for P5 while Hamilton secured P4. The stage is set for a thrilling race with grid penalties for Behrman, Stroll and Hamilton.
Very nice.
Thank you.
You did that with 34 seconds left.
Thank you, ChatGPT. You my baby. That's a joke.
I'm more of a Gemini fan.
Same, actually. But let's not get into it.
So, should we drill down a bit more into those penalties that we have?
During FP1, we had a Lance and Leclerc incident.
Dun dun dun!
So during FP1, Stroll re-entered the fast lane at turn 6, unaware of Leclerc approaching. Leclerc had no time to react and collided into the rear of Stroll's car. Leclerc's Ferrari suffered front wing damage. Stroll's Aston Martin sustained major damage, including a broken rear wishbone and floor damage. And Stroll had to get a gearbox change, didn't return to the session, and stewards found Stroll wholly at fault and claimed he didn't hear the team's radio warning. The penalty was a 1 grid place drop and 1 penalty point for Stroll. Leclerc managed to return to the pits, but risked floor damage due to the broken wing under the car, and Aston Martin's team principal admitted their radio communication to Stroll wasn't clear enough. Stroll missed track time, and it impacted his setup and preparation for the weekend. So not the best start for the Aston Martin outfit, but it's very tight and twisty around this circuit, and it was a bit of a clumsy crash when you watched the onboards of it, but luckily it didn't hugely impact the rest of his running, but not great for lack of awareness from Stroll, which is unfortunately a bit of a trope that he has.
So I didn't know that any incidents in free practice can lead to grid penalties for qualifying.
Oh, hell yeah.
So, because I thought free practice was literally just that, it's just practice.
Yeah, but if you had free practice and you were vying for a championship and you decided to run into the back of your competitor, you deserve, a penalty. So they do it and then it applies to qualifying. So it doesn't go into the race, it just goes into qualifying. But things like this in Monaco, you have to be so aware. And it is quite difficult because the cars are just really big and cumbersome and just stiff and hard to turn. But traffic was a big issue across all of the weekend, so they have to be stringent with the penalties they give, but it does mean it has a knock-on effect and adds more jeopardy going into qualifying, because qualifying is so paramount in Monaco.
And can you get a grid penalty in qualifying that leads to one in the race?
Yes.
Okay.
100% can, yeah.
Okay.
But that wasn't all. We had FP2, had more drama. Behrman and Sainz incident. Ollie Behrman overtook Carlos Sainz under red flag conditions during FP2. The red flag was caused by Oscar Piastri's crash at Saint-Devote. Behrman passed Sainz at La Cruzette. That's not what the word says. Why have I said La Cruzette?
Like the pot?
That's the bloody... That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Why have I read a completely different word? Behrman passed Sainz at La Rascas. What on earth did I say La Cruzette? Wow, okay, I need lunch. Despite red flags being shown on the light panels and his dashboard, Haas informed Behrman of the red flag rather late, but the steward said he still had enough warning, and regulation requires drivers to slow down immediately and not overtake during a red flag for safety reasons. Behrman said he didn't slow abruptly to avoid danger, but the stewards disagreed with him, and instead they decided to give him a 10-place grid penalty and 2 penalty points. He had finished 15th on both Friday sessions and admitted it was a bit of a tough day at the office. Despite the penalty, he felt positive about the car's improvement and set up going into the weekend. That's the sort of positivity we all need.
Yeah.
So what's 10 place grid penalty, and then what's 2 points?
You get 2 points on your licence like you do on, generic road car.
Okay.
So it's just if you get a certain amount of points, then you won't be able to race if you get too many points within a season.
You get like a race ban.
Oh, really?
Which happened last year, didn't it?
Yeah, so Kevin Magnussen was hit with a 1 race ban after being penalised for clashing with Alpine rival Pierre Gasly. He got 2 penalty points for that penalty, and he then took his total to 12. And if you get 12 points over a 12-month period, they will be issued with a one-race ban.
Damn.
Yeah.
The same as it is for just generic civilians. It's just to incentivise not driving dangerously.
Yeah, that's
or
fair.
going against the regulations. So that is why they got that. So 2 penalty points. But Behrman's a nice man, as is Stroll. I'm sure they won't go all the way up to 12.
So those were the penalties issued during practice, but we also saw 2 penalties issued during qualifying as well. So Lewis was given a penalty for impeding Max. Lewis was given a call that Max was slowing down, so he stayed on the racing line. But Max was actually on a hot lap, and Lewis was on the racing line and wasn't on the right-hand side of the track out of Max's way. So he got a 3-place grid penalty for that, taking him from 4 to 7.
The 2 fan bases of Lewis and Max are much more toxic towards each other than Lewis and Max actually are to one another, because Lewis and Max had a talk after qualifying, and Max was like, wasn't trying to get Lewis a penalty for it. But similar thing happened to me last year in Qatar, so I'm trying to make sure that it was consistent. But it wasn't his fault. I recognise it was the team's fault, so it is what it is. So frustrating for Lewis, because Monaco is not the sort of place you want to get a grid place penalty. But once again, radio communication between Lewis and his team not seeming to be that harmonious.
Yeah, and then for Lance Stroll, who already had a 1-place drop for crashing with Leclerc during practice, was then seen having a bit of a collision with Pierre Gasly, who described the incident as shocking, while Stroll said that he was simply not aware of Gasly being there. So he got another 3 places given to him, so 4 places, but ultimately Behrman had 10 places, so they can't both start in 20th place.
No, yeah, a bit of a messy one. We also saw Lewis Hamilton have a crash in FP3.
Yes.
Which wasn't great. So he brought out the red flag with 2 minutes left on the clock as he binned his Ferrari into Massenet, damaging the front right of the car. And he lost control, hit the barrier and both right side wheels. So he radioed saying, "Guys, I hit the wall. Damn, sorry guys." But it was a bit of an unusual incident and a bit of an unusual mistake for Lewis, but it is what it is. But they managed to rebuild the car, get it out in qualifying. He had quite a good result, P4, trailing behind Leclerc, but we have seen that gap consistently throughout this season so far as Lewis still gets up to speed, and he's also got one of the best qualifiers as a teammate. And then he obviously impeded because the team didn't communicate that to him. So he thought that Max was on a slow lap when actually he was on a bloody hot lap, and then got remanded back down to P7. So a bit of a roller coaster ride for another weekend for Lewis in his continued interesting trying journey with Ferrari.
And with all of that news and drama summed up nicely, wrapped in a bow, should we get on to the race?
Yes, let's do it.
Well, that was chaotic.
I found that really confusing to keep up with, to be honest with you. I didn't think that was going to go how that went. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the best way to summarise that race was it was very much a team game.
Well, it was, I think strategy reigned all today, and I actually didn't think I thought it would be more fun than that was.
Yeah.
That was really confusing.
It was entertaining, but it was mostly just confusing.
Yes. We should probably explain the mandatory 2-stop and why this has become a thing. This race has been on the calendar since 1950, which is the inception of when F1 started 75 years ago, which they're celebrating the anniversary of across this season. And it's got lots of tight, twisty, narrow corners. I mean, Max Verstappen said it best. It's incredibly narrow, challenging, bumpy. The history of Monaco in general, this is one of those races you always want to win. But because of this, it means that qualifying is then paramount to get right, because it's so difficult to overtake that a lot of the time where you place in Saturday is most likely where you're going to end up placing in Sunday. And the last 14 out of 20 races have been won from pole. So if you get it wrong in qualifying, you end up with a miserable Sunday, as we've seen with many drivers this weekend and years before. Last year, we saw Charles Leclerc claim his first home race victory, and a lap 1 red flag gave all the drivers a free chance to change their tyres. So we had an instance with Perez and the 2 Haas drivers. It was debris everywhere. It was very salt into the race.
Bad.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Perez's car looked like it had been put in a microwave. It was like half the size because there was so much debris and its 2 front wheels were gone. on. So everyone peeled back off the track into the pits, and then we had a red flag. But obviously, as they went into the pits and we had a red flag, you have a free chance to change your tyres, which everyone did, which meant that the whole of the top 10 finished in the exact same order as they qualified. So there wasn't much overtaking, there wasn't much excitement. So to avoid a repeat of this happening in 2025, the FIA have mandated 2 pit stops that drivers have to adhere to, and you have to use 2 different tyre compounds, whether it's wet or it's dry. That means that strategy will be at play in Monaco, which we did see, but we also saw team games as well, which I wasn't expecting. I don't know why I wasn't expecting that. People were saying that maybe you'd go for an early pit stop on lap 1 or 2, and then you would, if you're at the back of the grid, you'd be able to pit early, rejoin the race in clean air with no cars around you, and then other drivers that made their pit stop later, the early stopper could move up the order. Or if a safety car red flag happens later, which is common in Monaco, they could then do their second stop without having to lose too much time. That isn't how it transpired. And as we saw with Racing Bulls, they became the enemy of quite a few people around them.
Yes.
What was Mercedes' strategy about? Because that's the one that I'm confused by the most. And it seemed like they didn't really know what they were doing. And they were also, I think it was the last 15 laps is when they did both of the pit stops.
Yeah.
And for a second, I thought they just weren't going to pit and rather get disqualified than end up ranking very low. So I don't really get it.
You know what Mercedes are doing? It's what everyone does in their day-to-day life. It's like when you know you have to do a task you don't want to do, so you put it off.
Yeah.
And then it gets towards the end of the day, and you still don't want to do it, but the ramifications become bigger and more annoying to do because you've left it so late, to a point where it becomes even more agonising to even accomplish the task that you were meant to do in the fucking first place. Had you done it in the morning, your big tidy up, you wouldn't be sitting at 11 p.m. ordering a takeaway in a floor-drobe situation as you start crying about the state of our capitalist society that means you bought all these shitty clothes from a site that you don't like very much.
So you're basically just saying they're ADHD.
How the fuck have you got that from what I've said? Oh, people are pitting! Oh!
So what happened there, it was kind of all of the other teams' strategies compounded and became one big problem for Mercedes, basically.
So that's interesting. So the V-carb, whilst it's a very clever plan, has basically completely
fucked
halted
everyone else. Yeah.
Completely halted both Williams and Mercedes, which on their best days are much faster than the Racing Bulls, but their strategy at Monaco has worked. So what I think is happening is that Sainz is starting to back off, and they're playing the same team game that Racing Bulls are doing, which is backing up the Mercs so that Albon can be released to go off and make a pit stop gap so that he can pit, and then they hopefully can do the same with Sainz. But it means it's compounding the issue for Mercedes because they've had one team do it ahead, and now they're having the exact it's the same different team but the exact same tactic happening right in front of them.
The Racing Bulls of Hadjar and Lawson, they basically used Lawson to back everyone up so that there was a nice gap between Lawson and Hadjar so that Hadjar could pit and wouldn't lose lots of positions, right? So Lawson did that brilliantly, and they managed to do it for both of Hadjar's stops. So Hadjar got a wicked finish in the race, and that was all down to the fact that they used Lawson to back everyone up so that they could build time for his pit stop and build him a nice window to come out into. In doing that, Lawson was backing up Sainz and Albon in the Williams. Naturally, they were a bit pissed off with it, but then realised, well, if that's the game we have to play, then we have to play it. So they then did the exact same thing with Mercedes and then started backing up the Mercedes and was just like, well, Racing Bulls did it to us, we're going to have to do it to you. It's basically like, you know, pay and pass it on sort of thing. So they then did that as well with both of their drivers, with Sainz at first backing the Mercedes boys up so that Albon could do his pit stops, and then those two quickly switching car positions, and then Albon backing up the Mercedes as well.
We love teamwork.
We love teamwork. George Russell does not. Because he ended up cutting the corner at one point and saying, oh, he was driving so dangerously, I had to take avoiding action. No, everyone knew what you were doing, George. You just wanted to get past him and you were happy to accept whatever penalty came your way because as soon as you were in free air, you'd be able to make up the gap anyway, which he did. Oh! Drive-through penalty! Yikes! Yeah, that hasn't worked well for him, hasn't it? Has it? He gave his play away on the radio.
Legit.
he ended up getting a drive-through penalty, which means he needs to drive through the pit lane, which will obviously mean he'll have to decrease his speed to the pit lane limiter. And even with that penalty, he managed to come out still ahead of Albon, who was then backing up Antonelli. So it wasn't really a big penalty because it worked completely in his favour, which I think he knew. Albon's gone so slowly that Russell has taken a drive-through penalty and remained ahead.
Yep.
I think after that, they were kind of just hoping that they would get a safety car or a red flag so that they could have a cheap pit stop, but it didn't come.
What they wanted to avoid as well was that Yuki Tsunoda had a bit of a tricky qualifying and he started in P12, did an early pit stop, but then he hung on and then he ended up waiting for a safety car or something that would be able to benefit him for his next stop. But he then dropped down and he stopped early and as a result got stuck in that DRS train of all that gaggle of cars that had, Williams, Racing Bulls and Mercedes all within it. So Mercedes were trying to remove that element of their race and copying the likes of doing, Racing Bulls and also Williams, ended up not being a viable option because they had already done it to them. So they weren't really, they just got stuck. It was a very strange situation for Merck to be in.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately...
Well, they were kind of letting everyone else decide their race.
Well, I think that their main issue is that they started in race for 14th and 15th, which means that they didn't have much wiggle room anyway. Yeah. It wasn't that one qualified much higher than the other, so there was a gap they could work with. One could, be pushing out ahead and the other one could be bottlenecking the rest of them and they could pit nicely into that. Such did the Racing Bulls. But they also didn't split strategy, which I was quite interested in. I thought maybe they'd go on different tyre compounds. But ultimately, Monaco has the lowest tyre stress. It doesn't give you a huge amount of tyre worries. So with the 2 mandated stop, it wasn't done because they needed to do 2 pit stops. It was done for the spectacle of the show. But what we did see, which I thought was a shame, was you're at the pinnacle of motorsport. Monaco is known as the crown jewel of Formula One because it's got this wonderful principality with all these great backdrops. It's got the Mediterranean. It's got yachts. I mean, we saw Jeff Bezos was in the bloody Ferrari garage. You can't get more luxury than that, and that is the sort of trope of Monaco.
Yeah, and potentially Simon Wilson.
That's such a weird rogue thing to add in. That's such a rogue thing to add in.
I can confirm he did make it.
Oh my god,
nice.
He did!
For those people that don't know what the fuck we're on about, rightly so, there's a YouTuber called Simon Wilson. He does very fun travel vlogs and we like watching his videos. He did a series where he tried to see if he could get himself into the McLaren garage for the Monaco Grand Prix, and they basically said that if you could start from our founder's home, which would be Bruce McLaren, in New Zealand and prove it, we'll see what we can do. So he said, you have a deal, see you next weekend. He then had to roll the dice to be able to determine his budget and where he could have food from. One being, £100 budget for his flights all the way up to £500 if he rolled a 5. If they rolled a 6, he'd have to go back to New Zealand. This is a huge amount of plugging that I'm doing, Reem, just for one throwaway joke.
I didn't expect you to do
Well, I've got to give context, otherwise it's pointless. I don't think we were talking about a second ago. I was just, my mind's gone blank. Why did you bring that up?
Jeff Bezos, the crown jewel. Bring it
That's
back.
what we were talking about.
Yeah.
I was talking about Jeff Bezos working with idiots. As I was saying, we saw Jeff Bezos... Oh, I'm going to scramble my way to this point again. We saw Jeff Bezos in the Ferrari garage. This is the sort of level of bouginess that you see from the Monaco Grand Prix. If you're paying thousands of pounds to go off and be there on the side of the bloody harbour, you want cars to be going at full speed.
Yeah.
You don't want cars to be trundling around so slow that people are having to take avoiding action, as Kimi Antonelli had to do with one of the Williams cars, and having to move and miss the chicane because they're going so slowly and hitting the brakes he had to avoid an incident.
Yeah, it did get a little bit silly and potentially dangerous with some of Albon's braking, but it was what he was told to do.
Yes, and in Alex Albon's defence, he did say, that's not how we want to go racing, Carlos and I. I know we put on a bit of a bad show and made a few angry drivers. The 2-stop just made us do it twice. Just frustrating. Yeah, apologies to everyone who watched that. It really wasn't pretty.
And the same with James Vowles as well.
Yes.
Because Sky Sports F1 coverage that we were watching, they had him on the pit wall with them, so they were going back to him for, comments every now and then. And even he kept saying, this isn't what we wanted. This isn't how we want to race. It's not right, but it's what we have to do.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of talk up and down the paddock all week about strategists having to twist and turn their brains to come up with a strategy that would be viable for Sunday that would get them jumping other cars or whatever. But we did descend into bottlenecking, driving slowly, drive-through penalties, and not much else.
Yeah.
So it didn't really work. But I think we have to applaud the fact that at least the FIA and Formula One are trying their best to entice new fans to say, this is a track that's steeped in history. Every world champion has raced on this track. However, I don't think this was the way to do it. They tried it. They might not do it next year. I think it still needs tweaking.
Yeah.
But I still think we should applaud the fact that they've given it a go, because lots of sports just keep a problem as it is and they don't change it. At least they've tried.
Yeah, I think it would be a better idea for them to maybe, rather than say at some point in the race you need to make 2 stops, to have it like, okay, you need to make your first stop by this lap and you need to make your second stop by this lap. So then you don't just get teams like Red Bull waiting until, you know, the penultimate lap to make their pit stop because they're waiting for a red flag or a safety car or something like that. And you also don't get these teams doing this bottlenecking tactic.
Or if they just ban drivers from doing pit stops during a safety car, and then they no longer have to wait for them.
I still think you would get backing up other drivers, though. They'd do it even more if they weren't allowed to do it under safety car. The point today was that we had Fernando Alonso continuing his, this awful trend that he's having this year. There was hope that, oh my god, he's stopping off the road and he's having to retire the car after a power unit issue, but he was able to expertly take it off the road so it didn't impact the racing. If that had triggered a safety car, that would have spiced up the race, because then teams wouldn't have to deploy all of these other tactics. But we didn't have many opportunities for people to be able to get themselves a safety car and a cheap free pit stop, so they had to create their own free pit stops. What Martin Brundle for the Sky Sports F1 coverage was saying was they should mandate that one of the pit stops has to be done past half race distance. And I think that's actually a really good idea, because then it means that you can still catch that with a safety car. You could still wait and just do it and say, we're going to do an early pit stop and then we'll wait for a safety car. Or they can say, we're going to wait for an early on safety car and then do a mandated pit stop later in the race, as and when we feel fit. So it still needs tweaks made to it. I think the weird thing that came out of it was that with Monaco in previous years, it was like, we all know what's going to happen. And this year it was like, wait, what just happened?
Is going to happen?
It was just so strange. And I do think that we would have confused a lot of people. I'm not part of this. They have confused. It was my idea. I think they would have confused. If you were watching that as a first-time viewer of Formula One, you would never watch it again, because you'd be like, how the hell am I ever going to understand this? So it wouldn't make any sense. And you'd go away from that thinking that it was routine and normal for everyone up to P6 to be lapped by 1 or 2 laps. You're like, this is stupid.
You know what I was thinking about? Is people who are watching the race live, like who are on the stands, how do they understand what's going on? Like, imagine if you're just watching and they're seeing the lapped cars and they don't have that screen of the order. They'll be thinking, oh no, why is Norris with Behrman, for example?
Well, Iz and I, we went to Monza last year.
I tell you what my favourite part of it was.
Yeah.
It was seeing the cars. Oh wait! I didn't see the bloody cars. Bloody general admission. Fucking as if. I'm still sulking about it.
But we ended up having to try and pull up the coverage on my Now TV app on my phone, which was blocked in Italy. Oh. So then I tried downloading a VPN so that we could try and watch the coverage on my phone.
That's awful. Spending all that money and then not actually understanding what's going on in the race.
Well, they do sporadic parts of English commentary. I mean, fair enough, we're in Italy, I get it. We're just ignorant Brits and we're just like, everyone should speak English. But there was lots of British fans there.
Yeah.
And there was lots of European fans all over the world. But they did a huge amount of this really passionate, beautiful Italian commentary. And you could just hear from the cadence of their voice, it was really exciting. We were like, oh my God, whatever's happening, it must sound so good. And then they'd have an English commentary that would come on and they'd be like, they're saying it might rain. And it would go back to Italian again.
And let me tell you, it was 35 degrees and it didn't fucking rain.
You were praying for rain.
We were praying for rain.
We were dehydrated. We were getting sunburn. Oh. Since we gently touched on Alonso and his no-point curse, can we celebrate my boy Liam Lawson for a second?
Yes, you can.
He's broken the curse. He has points in F1. Woohoo!
You know what? Good for Lawson.
Yeah, but it hurts you to have to say that.
I'll admit, I've warmed up to him. He no longer has the ego. I think he's kind of been crushed a bit at the beginning, so I don't really think...
Is that what you look for in men? Had their souls and their egos crushed a little bit.
good for him.
I think he played the team game very, very well.
He had to, because he didn't qualify as well as Hadjar did, but I think Hadjar did just a stellar job. But Liam Lawson was very gracious in doing that, because it's one thing to say there's a whole question mark over whether you should be able to play the team game or not. And obviously with Red Bull and Racing Bulls, Red Bull effectively have 4 cars on the track, which there's a whole question mark over whether that's fair or not, and people will argue 2 and 4 until the end of time. However, it's always a difficult thing to be asked to help your teammate over your own race, because you're the sacrificial lamb in that sense. However, I think Liam Lawson got the assignment, as the young people do say, because it made sense for that, and actually, in turn, he was able to then have a pit stop gap made for him, and they were able to have a double points finish, which for Racing Bulls, with how tight everything is, and the money that they will be able to win if they can get themselves up the order. For example, we've got obviously Pierre Gasly, who was out in the race after a crash behind Yuki Tsunoda early on, and Franco Colapinto was unable to score any points. That's a pointless outing where Racing Bulls were able to have a double points finish. That is how you leapfrog up the order. So I think a perfect team game, and hopefully it'll give him some confidence, because the team will be grateful for that, and hopefully he can take that momentum, take it into Barcelona, and the car looked good this weekend for Racing Bulls.
Where did Ocon end up?
Yeah, Ocon was over the moon when he crossed the line in Q3, because he was managed to get himself into 8th place. It hasn't been the easiest time for Ocon as he's made the swap to Haas this year. And in the free practice sessions, he was pretty much at the back of the field for most of them. So he said on the team radio, "Thank you, team, for the trust and for keeping on trying things all the way to Q2, where we really turned the car, I would say, a little bit around." I think it's great to follow the front runners. However, Ocon's a good racer, and we haven't seen that much from him in the Haas. It's been a bit of a turbulent time. They've got a brand new driver lineup for 2025. They've obviously had rookie Oliver Behrman that has impressed, but they've shown a lot of resilience and a renewed focus on performance. So I think a 7th place is very, very good.
I agree.
I mean, there was a radio message. I don't remember if it was for qualifying or if it was during the race, but it was when he was performing very well, and you heard the Haas engineer being very supportive on the radio, and I was thinking, that seems like a good work environment. Compare that to Alpine, and you'd understand why Haas is doing a lot better than Alpine is at the moment.
Yeah, the radio messages are the main centre of where teams are successful or not. No, I get the point. I mean, they've done significantly better. They've scored 20 points in the first 6 races, which is already a substantial improvement over their 2024 efforts. And a standout highlight was that they got a double points finish in the Chinese Grand Prix, with Esteban Ocon finishing 5th and Oliver Behrman finishing in 8th. So the car has got good potential on a smooth circuit, but it has got issues with a bumpy circuit, hence why Monaco might not have been their best circuit. However,
He did well.
Yeah, when they've managed to get the car in the right working window, we are able to see Esteban Ocon's talent come through. Yeah. And I think maybe he's just struggled. It's always difficult to get up to speed with a new car. And a team in flux, as we've said before, under new management of Ayo Komatsu, continues. But I think a really good outing for Ocon. Unfortunately, not the same for Ollie Behrman, but he has had good performances, but this weekend might be one to forget for him.
I still miss Gunther Steiner.
So do I. We all do.
I saw he did an interview, and someone asked him, if you were the president of the FIA, what would be the first rule that you would bring in? And he said, ban the swearing ban. In fact, extra points if you swear.
Gunther Steiner for president.
Of the world, not even just the FIA.
A tale of two halves for Red Bull this weekend. We've come off the back of Max Verstappen's dominating win in Imola. Monaco, I think, exposed some of the car's weaknesses.
Yeah.
If we're looking at qualifying, the stats for Verstappen's qualifying against both teammates he's had this year, because for those that don't remember, because it was a while ago now, and we've all seemed to have settled down off that drama, he obviously had Liam Lawson for the first couple of races this season.
I haven't settled down from that drama.
That's fair enough.
Still reeling.
But your boy's on the up.
Yeah.
So with his surfer hair and his rather cute good looks, he's on his way. But yes, for head-to-heads in terms of qualifying, which means which teammate of the two were able to get and qualify higher than the other, Max was 2-0 against Liam Lawson. He's now 6-0 against Yuki Tsunoda. So to out-qualify Max has been a bit of a rare feat in recent seasons, as many a different teammate has noticed. But I think Yuki Tsunoda was a bit of a loser when it came to qualifying. He was a loser of qualifying. He's not a loser in qualifying. That's rude. No, I meant as in he was a loser of qualifying. He was a victim of qualifying.
Okay.
Because I think he would have finished in P12 hoping that the mandated 2-stop would have been able to have created, maybe a high risk, high reward, high yielding, result at the end of it. And unfortunately, that just didn't seem to happen. So I think Yuki's doing quite well, considering all of the factors that come with being in that second seat. Again, I don't feel it was a standout performance from him.
No.
But ultimately, Max wasn't completely on the pace this weekend either. From Imola to Monaco, very different tracks, of course, shows a few weaknesses within the Red Bull car this weekend, and he came away in P4.
Yeah, I think Red Bull were obviously leaving him out for as long as possible, hoping that there would be something to add to his outing, because he wasn't able to pass actually on the track. So they kind of needed either a safety car or a red flag while he was leading, because everyone behind had pitted, so that he could gain track position that way. But it didn't work. And there was a big enough gap so that if it did come to it in the end, he would be able to pit into that and come out in fourth. So it was kind of, there was no real loss in leaving him out for that long, basically.
I actually thought it was quite a clever move from Red Bull, to be honest with you. I thought it was actually very savvy to do so.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it didn't work, but it was still an idea.
But
and if it had
come
worked,
through,
then
imagine if they had a safety car on lap 77, everyone would be saying Red Bull are huge IQ. You've got to go for these things.
Yes, although with the way that the rules work, if there had been a red flag on lap 77, as you said, and they decided not to restart the race, and he still hadn't made his second pit stop, then he would have got a 30-second time penalty as per the rules of the race, and that would have put him in fourth place anyway. So, yeah, no real loss in whatever strategy they went for.
Yeah.
30-second penalty and he still would have been in fourth?
Yeah.
Damn.
There was a huge gap. I think we also saw that the RB21, which is obviously this year's Red Bull Challenger, is still struggling with overheating their tyres compared to the rivals around him, especially McLaren.
They just need some of that tyre water.
They just need some tyre water, baby, or some phase-changing materials, either one. But you could tell that it seemed like more of a worry for Max Verstappen compared to the top three, which I thought was quite interesting. So I think we've cast sort of a look that McLaren are invincible and Red Bull are slacking. Red Bull aren't slacking. Red Bull have still got a really brilliant car. There's obviously been lowlights. The Miami Grand Prix wasn't great because he started on pole. He finished fourth and was nearly 40 seconds behind Oscar Piastri. So there was a huge deficit on a track like that. But I think that also highlighted their issue with being able to lose grip and pace in medium speed corners. So they still have weaknesses, but overall that car seems to be handling a lot better. And it has got a narrow operating window where they can get it into the sweet spot. But I think, one, Max is able to find that sweet spot very well. And two, I think that the team are starting to understand their car, and the upgrades they brought have clearly added some more performance. But this track just didn't highlight that.
Well, maybe McLaren have some worrying they need to be doing about their engine. Because last week out in Imola, we saw Kimi Antonelli having to retire due to issues with his power. This weekend in qualifying, we had the same thing with George Russell. He lost power and had to drop out of his Q2. And then during the race, Fernando Alonso with a Mercedes engine, the Aston Martin obviously being customers of Mercedes, also had a power failure. Damn. So McLaren with Mercedes engines maybe have something to worry about as well.
Mercedes, especially with George, they've come out of the blocks with a really strong start to this season. I think Kimi Antonelli has been right there. I think the two blips for Antonelli will have been Imola and now Monaco. Imola, obviously, we all know, he retired from the race due to a throttle deployment issue, which was his first retirement in F1. And then we had the crash in qualifying, compounded by their race strategy not quite working for them, or not working for them, full stop, in the race. But you're right. It was a very unlikely scene to see two DNFs from Mercedes. And I was surprised to see a Mercedes engine erupting like that from overheating. I thought it was very interesting because I know we're obviously not there, but compared to some of the race weekends we've had, I was surprised that Monaco would have been somewhere that it could have overheated. But I guess where you're all around all of those hot cars in the turbulent wake, obviously didn't like that at all in the back of the Aston.
Yeah.
So that's just like a weather issue. Like that causes the engines to fail. Because I didn't really get why the engines were failing.
Well, it's overheating. It's not all down to the weather. It's the fact that they're travelling in dirty air, they're pushing it too hard, not enough time to cool the car down and stuff like that.
Because that wasn't happening at the beginning of the season.
No, I assume it's also partially due to the amount that it's been worn out
It's
as well.
been used more, so it will end up being more. They have a certain allocation of how many engines they can use throughout the season, and if they end up using more than that, then they will get penalties as a result. A fresh engine will give you more performance because it's shiny and brand new, but you don't want to use your allocation too quickly. You don't want to eat all your sweets for the end of the film. You want to save them, so throughout the film, apparently, is the analogy I've gone for, so I'll stick with it. So, unclear. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know the inner workings of the Aston Martin engine that's supplied by Mercedes, because I simply don't, because I'm sitting here in the UK recording a podcast with my friends, not in the paddock. But it is one factor. I assume, allegedly. There you go, I've covered all bases.
Thank you.
Well, we've spoken about Red Bull, we've spoken about McLaren. Shall we talk about the Monaco man himself?
Yes, the young Monegasque. That means someone from Monaco.
Yes.
Okay, well, you looked
Well, who is it then?
Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
nice. Although Lewis does live in Monaco.
And so does Lando, and so does Oscar.
Yes, so many of them. I wonder why.
Tax haven.
So, Reem, are you aware of something called the Charles Leclerc Monaco curse?
No.
Would you like to hear the history of Charles Leclerc's climb up from pain to podium?
Yes.
The Leclerc story. God,
Go
that could be
for
a
it.
book. Hello. Okay. When Charles Leclerc made his F1 debut for Alfa Romeo in 2018, he became just the fourth driver in history to hail from Monaco and complete a race. But his home race has not been a happy hunting ground for the young Monegasque. In 2017, he was racing for Prima Racing and claimed pole position in F2. He came into the pits to change his tyres soon after a crash had happened, but before the safety car had been deployed, so he ended up dropping down to fourth. He then had a suspension failure and he retired a lap later. So his first time in F2, his first time at home, 2017, he's out.
Oh.
2018, in his first F1 Monaco race, as he was in the Alfa Romeo, with 6 laps to go, Charles was chasing a Toro Rosso. His brakes failed and he crashed into the back of the Toro Rosso of Brendan Hartley.
Oh.
Not a good outing.
No.
In 2019, he was now driving for Ferrari. He was eliminated in Q1 during qualifying, and in the race he was chasing the Renault of Nico Hülkenberg. Charles Leclerc's rear tyre made contact and then sent him into a spin, only for him to get a puncture. He ended up retiring as he had bad floor damage. So 2019, out of the race. 2020, do you know what happened in 2020?
COVID.
Yeah, the race didn't happen. Okay! 2021, he set provisional pole. He then crashed into a wall, meaning no one else could set a faster time, and he claimed P1. Ferrari were confident that the crash would not affect his gearbox, but on the lap to the grid, he suffered a failure to the left drive shaft. Oh. No. The left drive shaft. I apologise. So he got a DNS, which means do not start. He was out of the race. In 2022, Leclerc clinched pole position. A botched strategy call from Ferrari cost Leclerc a chance to finally win in his home race. The race was delayed due to rain and started behind the safety car. Ferrari brought him in to swap from wets to intermediates. They soon called him in again to swap onto the hard tyre, but the race engineer tried to cancel the call just as Leclerc had entered the pit lane and was asking him, Why? What are you doing? Over the radio. He ended up having to settle for P4. 2023, he qualified in third. He was then summoned to the stewards and was hit with a 3 grid place penalty for impeding Lando Norris. He ended up finishing where he started in P6. But in 2024, he qualified on pole.
Oh, damn.
He didn't fuck up.
Damn.
Nothing went wrong.
That's crazy.
And this is the most incredible commentary you're ever going to hear as he did his final lap around the Monaco circuit to finally take his home Grand Prix victory for the first time after trying 2018, 19, not 20, 21, 22, 23. Are you ready to hear
I'm
the
ready.
amazing commentary that set this race alight, made men and women and others around the world sob?
Yes, I'm ready.
I'll put some inspirational music behind this.
Please do.
Cue
Thank
the
you.
music.
2017, Charles Leclerc lost his father, and in his final days, he told his father a white lie, that he'd made it to Formula One, that he'd signed the contract. It wasn't true then, but his driving has made it true now. And look what he's done with the opportunity. The grandstands he saw built as a kid, growing up, now rise for him. And for the first time in 93 years, this fabled race is won by one of their own. Charles Leclerc wins the Monaco Grand Prix.
I have goosebumps.
Same, I got chills.
Isn't it amazing? So this man has gone through struggle and strife, but he, in 2024, was able to take his first home race Grand Prix. And now, in 2025, he took provisional pole. And Lando Norris, that little rascal, was able to snatch it from him by 15 milliseconds.
That's crazy.
And deny him the chance to win it back to back. But considering the Ferrari's pace, and he was not expecting it to be anywhere, I still think a really good race result.
Yeah.
But when you hear the emotion of that story, which is all true, you can see why he was disappointed with P2 and not P1.
Yeah, I was a bit confused about him not seeming too happy when the race ended. Because I'm like, you still got P2. This is the best that Ferrari has done all season.
Yep.
And you should be proud of it. But now that you gave the context and the background, especially after what happened last year, I get why he's disappointed.
He must be so triggered going to that track.
God, yeah. Why does he live there?
He must be triggered every time he goes home. Like, ugh.
Oh, if the walls could speak. It's difficult because Ferrari have managed to secure some podium finishes, which shows that when their car is in the right window, it can be a front-running car. He got podium in Saudi Arabia. He's now had a podium in Monaco. They've also obviously won the sprint race over in China, but they've also had a lot of downed moments.
He got podium in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Oh, okay. Well, you got bad memory, but it did happen. I'm not making it up. But they've struggled to generate consistent one-lap pace and tyre warm-up, but they've obviously had the humbling double exit from Q2 in their home race in Imola. They were able to make a good recovery, but I think Charles Leclerc wrings the neck of that Ferrari, but qualifying, they're still just not quite. I feel like they're a few tenths away from being completely in the fight. And Monaco, Charles was quite obviously driving with the fury of many a bad Monaco weekend behind him and desperately wanted to get pole position. But I thought a well-managed race from Ferrari today, to be honest with you. I thought they did it really well.
Even Lewis did very well. I think
Yes.
going up from P7, despite the penalty, he still went up to P4, and I think he still did a very good race. Like I think, like as much as he pushed, I don't think he could have pushed harder than that.
Yeah,
I think he was in a very tough position. But comparing Ferrari to the past races of the season and how much they were struggling before, last race and this race, I think Ferrari's been doing very, very well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Charles Leclerc topped the Friday time sessions and was on the pace from the second he touched down in Monaco. As I've said that, he lives in Monaco. No, but he would have travelled from the last race. No, don't you try and catch me out. I'm on it, clearly. So both him and Lewis were, showing good pace. However, Charles was saying, our biggest weakness is the slow speeds corners, but overall I felt comfortable with the car and I think we did a very good job. Lewis, on the other hand, was very confused over the call that he got that said, push now, this is our race. Lewis wasn't really racing anyone when he said that. And on the radio, when I was listening to it, I thought like, oh, there's a strategy at play. That's exciting. And then Lewis said about it, he said, I don't know, the information wasn't that clear. I don't know what I was really fighting for. I used up my tyres a lot in that moment, but I was so far away from everyone around me. So I was like, right, okay. Because you sometimes think, oh, I wonder what the backstory of that radio call is. He obviously then had a conversation afterwards, after the race. Oh, yeah, did a good job, guys. Well done for the rebuilding the car and whatever. And then he said he got nothing back from his engineer. So he said, are you upset with me or something? And then nothing. So I think Lewis Hamilton's biggest issue currently is the communication between him and his engineer Adame, because I don't think they are on the same page. Sometimes they act like they don't even are in the same room or at the same race or at the same event. So that communication has probably been the biggest breakdown of Lewis's weekend.
That's so petty from the Ferrari engineer.
He may have
just not respond.
You know what, Reem? I'm not being funny.
He might have been having tea.
He might have been having a tea break.
He might have been having a tea break. He might have got to the end of that and thought, fuck, this guy asks for all this information. And his mate's like, you are meant to do that. He's like, yeah, I know, but I'm tired, man. Let me shush, I want a cup of tea. Maybe he just left the desk. Maybe he thought, I'm not doing this anymore. I've got nothing left. What does he want from me? I work at Ferrari, of course I'm upset. We'll never know. A narrative we can continue to follow. Well, now that we've spoken about that, Lando Norris wins his first Monaco Grand Prix, and it's rather exciting because this is the second race he's won this year. He came out of the gates, he won in Australia with a brilliant wet weather drive. He had lots of changeable conditions, lots of safety car restarts and lots of drama, to be honest with you. And then a lull started to happen, and Oscar Piastri, his teammate, was lunging forward, was taking pole positions and was winning races, was fighting with Lando's rather good pal Max Verstappen, who is now a father. And yet, when he came to Monaco, it wasn't Piastri that was at the front end, sharp end of the pace. It was Norris. And I think that maybe the self-doubt and the drama and the lull, he even said that he wasn't driving faster, he was driving smarter. So where he hasn't been very comfortable with the car, he seems to have started to get it together. And what a race to get it together for, damn.
Considering the fact that now with the driver standings, Norris is only, 3 points behind Piastri.
Yeah.
Yep.
Despite him not winning for the past few races, not winning since Australia, he's still been, getting very, very good points. He's still been, P2 and P3 for most of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
So just one extra race win, and he's only 3 points behind. So he's very much able to probably overtake Piastri in a few more races.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Piastri sort of came out of the woodwork because Lando won Australia, but then Oscar Piastri only went and won China, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia and Miami. So here we are. He's come back to Monaco, all the way from Somerset he started, all the way to Monaco he's arrived, and he's won. I mean, it's not the biggest surprise, it's a McLaren. McLaren are pretty pacey wherever they go, but I still thought with the 2 mandated stops, Lando even said, I hated it, made it more scary for me, and I get that because the one thing you know with Monaco is I've nailed qualifying, now I've got the race to do, it's pretty much going to be a car parade with all my pals.
The bag.
Exactly, and then the FIA decide, we want it to be more entertaining for F1 fans that don't get stuff, and then it ends up being this incredibly hard to decipher strategic game and battle that goes on, but beautifully managed by McLaren, and they seem to have been able to bring home another 1-3 finish.
Since we're talking about points, let's talk about the points for constructors.
Yes, let's do it.
Because P2 in constructors is going to be a hard-fought battle, it seems. So, McLaren seem to have P1 in the bag.
Yep.
With 319 points after this Monaco Grand Prix. Then in P2, we have Mercedes on 147. And then in P3, we have Red Bull on 143. And in P4, we have Ferrari on 142.
So Ferrari are 1 point away from the exact same score as Red Bull.
Yeah.
That tells you how impressive Verstappen has been this season.
Yeah.
Because that is, unfortunately to Yuki, he is fighting one-handed. But that is bloody impressive.
Yeah. So at some point, and dare I say some point soon, the fact that Ferrari have 2 racers who are consistently scoring points is going to become a big pain in that Red Bull's arse.
There is, and there is a very famous saying, Nav, and I think you'll know it. Points mean?
Points.
No. What? Points mean prizes.
Oh yes, points mean prizes.
Points mean
Of
prizes.
course, I knew that, yeah.
Yeah. As we go into 2026, the second half of this 2025 season, people will be switching to their 2026 development full throttle. So even though they're going to be switching their minds over, they are still going to be wanting to be racing hard on track because P2 is a huge difference in prize money. But I did not realise that it was that close in P2 currently.
Yeah, and also Mercedes kind of fucked it for themselves with this one. Because
Yeah.
the fact that neither Antonelli or Russell scored points means that now they're so close to Ferrari and Red Bull. Otherwise, they would have been still ahead.
But then I'd argue that with, things like Ferrari, they had their double disqualification that happened, and that meant they had a pointless outing all weekend. And then similarly, we've had quite a few races where Yuki Tsunoda and obviously Liam Lawson haven't scored points. So what we're seeing now is it's starting to level out a bit more, but heating up nicely. I actually genuinely don't. I feel like Red Bull do deserve to have P2 currently because of how Max has been driving, but not having Yuki being able to be right in the fight with him is going to mean that they're going to be just bleeding points. So we'll have to see how that carries on.
I mean, of the 8 races that we've had, there's been 4 races where we've had a Mercedes on the podium.
Damn.
And that Mercedes obviously being George Russell. There's been 4 races where we've had a Red Bull on the podium, obviously being Max. 2 of those have been wins. And there's been 2 races now where we've had a Ferrari on the podium, both of those being Leclerc. So the fact that there's only been 2 races with a Ferrari on the podium and they're only 1 point behind is crazy when you realise that there's been 4 with Verstappen on a podium and 2 of those have been wins.
Yeah.
It's insane. Meanwhile, there have been 8 races where there has been a McLaren on the podium.
Yeah,
So
makes
they've been
sense.
on it.
there's never been a race this season without a McLaren
But
on the podium.
if McLaren carry on with this trajectory, then we are going to see what we've been suspecting might happen. There'll be an intra-team battle. Admittedly, they're both very chilled out guys.
Yeah.
I don't feel we're going to be seeing them come out in the press and start saying one's an arsehole and one's a bitch. Like, I don't see that happening. However, as I've said rightly before, points mean prizes, not points, Nav. And either one of them have never won a championship. As they say in boxing, someone's O's got to go.
Yeah. 6 out of 8 of the Grand Prix that we have had so far have had both McLarens on the podium.
Damn.
Yeah, they
So
need
their
to be
championship
stopped,
lead
and they
is
will not be stopped.
Understandable.
My favourite part was, for those that watched the podium coverage, was that Zach Brown very politely shook the hand of the man that was passing him the constructor's trophy, and he then proceeded to make the most American noise ever. Yeah! Which made me laugh, because you normally can't hear them celebrating. You can't hear the audio of them celebrating, which means it was a guttural, visceral noise. It came from the depths of his
so
diaphragm.
American.
Just a happy man.
Oh, I love Zach Brown. I think he's so much fun. But he's he was elated. And I mean, my God, look at the season they're having. I'm not surprised, but it just made me laugh. There's absolutely no analysis in there for you whatsoever. It just made me laugh when I saw it. Right, now that we've got the vroom out of the way, Nav, what time is it?
Oh, let me just have a look on my Fitbit. It is 6:38 p.m. on Sunday. You know what's really fun about my Fitbit?
What?
I have the Google Arts and Culture background. So every day it gives me a different picture, usually from like museums and galleries and stuff. Mm-hmm. And today's one is called, because if I click on it, it'll tell me what it's called and it'll tell me where it is. It's called The Young Red Diamond.
That's very pretty. Huh. Diamonds, you say?
Yeah.
I have a segment.
1 second. Let me cook.
I'm so curious where this is going.
The allure of Formula One lies in 3 things: high stakes, high speed, and high intrigue. And the story of the 2004 Monaco diamond heist delivers just that, and is still talked about 21 years later. Are you intrigued?
I am intrigued.
Well, yeah, okay, cool. So, in 2004, Jaguar Racing, who were owned by Ford, were underperforming, and the team was desperately trying to cling to anything that would give them some sort of relevance. And the sequel to Ocean's 11, can you guess what the very imaginative name of that sequel was called?
Ocean's 11 Part 2.
Nope.
Ocean's 11, the sequel.
What the fuck is wrong with you two? Ocean's 12.
You've never heard of Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12,
No,
Ocean's 13?
I've seen Ocean's 8 because it was all women.
Weird thing to say out loud.
Okay.
Ocean's 11 Part 1... no, I'm sorry. Ocean's 12 was about to hit the cinemas, and a group of marketing experts from Jaguar and the film's production company Warner Brothers decided to come up with a very clever idea. They decided to play on the film's heist plotline with the 2 massive, uninsured diamonds on the nose cones of the 2 Jaguar cars for the Monaco Grand Prix. Now, some people have pointed out that Ocean's 12 was actually about the theft of a Fabergé egg. But hey, semantics. Do you want to know what a Fabergé egg is?
I love a Fabergé egg.
Fabergé egg is a bejewelled egg, first created by the jewellery house of Fabergé in St. Petersburg in Russia. As many as 69 Tsarist Russia-era eggs were created, of which 61 are currently known to have survived. Allegedly, it's from Wikipedia. I was trying my best, girls. So they partnered with the diamond trader Steinmetz, who provided 2 1.4 carat white diamonds. They were valued at around $300,000 each.
Damn.
George Clooney, Brad Pitt and Matt Damon, who were in the film, were also on hand to promote the stunt. So, the Jaguar racing team had 2 drivers, Mark Webber and Christian Klein. Mark Webber had spent 2 years as a reserve driver for Benetton and was then given a seat in Minardi in 2002 before making the switch over to Jaguar for 2003 and 2004. So he'd done a decent amount of racing in Formula 1 by that point. Christian Klein, on the other hand, was a rookie who joined F1 in 2004 with the Jaguar outfit, and Monaco was only his 6th race in Formula 1.
Mark Webber is also Oscar Piastri's manager.
He is,
really?
very
Yes.
true. So, the diamond on Klein's car, guess how many laps it lasted?
10.
1. So, there isn't actually any footage of this crash, but Klein lost the car going into the hairpin, ploughing headfirst, we presume, we don't know, into the barrier on the opening lap, and as a result, was out of the race. Jaguar team spokesman Nav Sindhu, Nav, shout out.
Whoop whoop.
There you go.
It's not me.
No one's going to believe you.
What year was that?
2004.
Okay, so I was 7 years old.
You're just giving away your age there. At that point, I probably should have been worried about the car or the driver, but I must admit, my immediate thought was the diamond. Which is wild.
Sorry, that's me. Can confirm that is me.
So the question was, had it been wedged into the barrier? Did it get swept away? Or, this is my favourite theory, did some lucky ducky spectator just casually stroll off with a $250,000 diamond souvenir from the race?
You would.
You would, 100% you would. Nobody knows for sure, but the team had to deny rumours that they swapped it for a fake. The diamond supplier Steinmetz had a CEO that was detained in a fraud investigation back in 2017, so he's not the most legit person, but he said that Diamond was uninsured. But Jaguar got exactly what they wanted from the stunt. Publicity. The story made international news for weeks afterwards, and even though 2004 marked Jaguar's last year in Formula 1 and the team was then purchased and turned into Red Bull the following year, they would go on to be one of the sport's top teams, but what happened to the Diamond, we will never fucking know. Is that not the most bonkers story I've ever heard?
Yeah.
That is very bonkers. I think it's part of the stunt that the diamond would disappear. Like in the movies, they'd have like a heist and they would steal a diamond. Or a Fabergé egg.
Yeah, but that would work if, like, they then went to the premiere and then George Clooney, like, pulled out of his pocket and was like, see? But nothing.
No one
happened.
ever saw from the diamond ever again. There was no, like, follow-on story of, like, oh, it was all a ruse. Like,
Literally.
It's just gone. And also, the teams have no involvement in the recovery of the car or the rebuild of the barriers or anything like that. That's all down to the stewards. So some random steward might have been like, oh yeah, let's just move this car back a bit, saw a diamond on the front of it and was just like, pocket.
Well, the part of the car that had the diamond ripped off the car. So it was just that part of the car that someone needed to pick up.
Yeah.
And if you saw a 1.4 carat diamond stuck on with glue, you'd be like, trying to get that off. Chilling, trying to get it, oh yeah, no, don't worry, I've got it, I'll take it back. But the team weren't allowed to get their car back for another 2 hours after the car was recovered. So people are like, well, the person that towed the car might have been involved, it might have been, or it might have just flown off on lap 1 because it was only secured with glue. So maybe it just flew off and it, got hit by a bird, it swallowed it, pooed it out 3 days later, and a gardener picked it up. I mean, it's not very likely, but yeah, I'm just saying.
What a lucky gardener.
But yeah, exactly.
What an unlucky bird.
Yeah.
Must have hurt.
But I just love how random the story is.
Yeah.
Because it would never happen today. But it was like the perfect setting for something that bougie and over the top and outrageously opulent to happen at the Monaco Grand Prix. But then for the Jaguar team to be like, shit, and then later be like, this was the best thing we've ever done. So going out with a bang.
Well, there you have it. That was Monaco with 2-stop regulations, diamond heists, and the curse of Leclerc, I guess. Mm-hmm. Shall we move on, therefore, to Reams recap?
Yes.
All right. Lando Norris wins Monaco.
Lando Norris makes a record-breaking lap at the Monaco Grand Prix and ultimately wins the race, and making him only 3 points away from his teammate Oscar Piastri in the driver's standings.
Mercedes' pointless outing.
Mercedes had an awful strategy going into the race, but ultimately they were just placed in a very tough position, but that cost them 0 points at the end of the race and also made them very close to losing their position in the Constructors' Championship.
My boy Lawson got his first point.
God. Liam Lawson finally gets out of his head after moving to Racing Bulls and finally scores some points only at the 8th race of the season.
Alonso continues to be the unluckiest driver in Formula 1.
Fernando Alonso seemed to be on a high at the start of the Monaco weekend, but then he ultimately ended up having his engine break during the race, which fits his theme and motto of saying that he is the unluckiest fucking driver in the race.
Racing Bulls plays dirty, which means that Williams have to do the same.
The FIA placed very tough conditions for all of the drivers and the teams at the Monaco Grand Prix with the 2 pit stop strategy, but that led to the teams playing dirty, which started with Racing Bulls and then transitioned to Williams, which left Mercedes in a very tough position, but ultimately what the race proved is that teamwork makes dream work.
Patrick Dempsey.
We love him. Grey's Anatomy star Patrick Dempsey turns out that he's not dead, but he's actually at the Monaco Grand Prix watching in the stand. And so was Jeff Bezos.
And Simon Wilson.
I
don't know him from Grey's Anatomy. I know him from Enchanted.
Oh, really? I used to love him on Grey's Anatomy.
I've never seen it.
He was McDreamy.
I know him from Bridget Jones.
Oh, yes, of course!
Yeah. Also, spoiler, I didn't know he was dead. I'm not going to watch it now.
Well, it's like 15 seasons. You're not going to watch it.
All right, fine.
Well, there you have it. That was Ream's recap. Very nicely done.
Thank you.
Which means it's now time for the Grand Prix Podium.
Ooh. The Grand Prix Podium is cemented within the history of Formula One, proving that if you make things up, sometimes they come true.
Okay. Anyone got an idea for who they are making their prick of the week?
Oh, this is a tough one. You know what? This race is actually a great race to use for a Grand Prix Podium because there's so many answers you could give, and I don't think any of them would be wrong. So I need a second.
The FIA.
For the fact that they've made this rule.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I mean, I feel like none of the drivers were particularly pricks on the track. I think they were all placed in very tough positions, and all of the teams and the drivers didn't really know what to do because it's the first time that this rule has been implemented with this race. So I can't, I feel like, yes, some of them could pass for a prick, but at the same time, in the back of my head, I'm like, it really wasn't their fault.
Yeah, I get you. Dare I say Fernando Alonso for still not getting...
Oh, it was his fault. His engine died.
I know, but I'm just trying to pull someone out of my arse at this point.
Maybe Russell?
No, absolutely not. I refuse.
But I mean, he literally decided to take a penalty,
and I
rather
fucking
than
love
give
that
back
for
a
him.
position to Albon.
Look, George Russell is in his Karen era, okay, and I'm digging it. Have you got an answer?
Yeah,
go for it.
My prick of the week is Yuki Tsunoda.
Ooh.
Yuki Tsunoda has been in Formula One since 2021 in the sister team to Red Bull, and he has been a great asset to that team. He's been great in pushing development for the car. He's put in some great performances. He's a very consistent point scorer. He obviously got promoted to the main Red Bull team and was then in the seat ready for Japan. However, when it comes to the finishing places in order of where he's come in those races following his promotion, he's come 12th, 9th, DNF, 10th, and today 17th.
Damn, I didn't realise he was having it that bad.
Yeah.
I think where there's been the demotion of Liam Lawson, a lot of drama around that, and lots of people felt, Yuki himself, feeling like he was overlooked for that promotion.
Meanwhile, he's been getting away scot-free with some fucking awful performances.
Yeah, there's been some hoonas there, and I think that his issue was that qualifying, he's just too far away from Max in terms of pace, and also he went for an early stop in this race, and then it didn't really pay off. He then got stuck in a DRS train. And obviously Monaco's not really the place to show true pace of your car, because a lot of the time you're stuck around other cars and you're stuck in the turbulent wake, all that hot air going out at you. It's kind of a survival race. I'm still waiting for a standout performance that comes from Yuki, and I thought today it just didn't come together for him. And on a lot of other racetracks, you'd be able to have a really strong recovery drive. But ultimately, I feel like I haven't seen him have a performance that has really impressed me since he's joined that team. And he's only been able to secure 7 points since joining that team.
I back it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Thank you. It's because I did such a good argument, wasn't it? Yeah. Thank you.
And because we were scrambling to find someone else. Yeah. All right, then who are we putting as grand?
I think I'm going to put, and this isn't bias, this is just based on the performance in the race. I think I'm going to put Sainz as my grand for this week.
Oh, for God's sake.
But in terms of, well, both Williams, I think, did very well. Both Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon did very well with this race, and they both scored points. But I think the reason I'd give grand to Sainz is because the teamwork that he showed during the race was something to applaud. Like, he was told to give back the position to Albon. He didn't fight it at all. He wasn't, petty about it. He just immediately gave it back to him. And I think even Albon, waved to him as he passed by. I think they both worked very well together, and they were supporting each other and having each other's backs. And he's just he seems like he wants to do things for the team. He's not putting his ego first. So, and I think he deserves grand for this week.
Okay. I'm giving grand to George Russell.
I knew you were going to say that.
Why George Russell?
Because I look, if everyone else is playing dirty, then there's nothing wrong with him doing the same thing, right? He just played dirty in a different way.
You love a messy driver.
Huh?
You love a messy driver.
in his Karen era. He was like, no, I'm not letting these fuckers hold me up for any longer. I've got more pace than this. And he just was like, I'll cut the corner, I'll take the penalty. And you know what? He actually ended up making up so much time that the penalty didn't end up meaning anything. Yes, he still didn't manage to score points, but at least he tried something.
I mean, he kept us entertained.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would have been a rather, sort of boring, plateaued race. So I give you that. I don't know about him being, like, iconic for being a Karen. I'm not sure about that, actually. My grand of the week is Charles Leclerc. Coming into this race weekend, Charles and the rest of Ferrari were really unsure about how their car was going to perform. They've been quite nervous about how their car performs under low-speed corners, which obviously Monaco is all low-speed corners, and the handling of that Ferrari has seemed a bit inconsistent and hard to deal with. But Charles, throughout this whole season, although he's had disappointing results, he's able to wring the neck of that Ferrari and razz it as much as he can. And I thought his qualifying performance was just stellar. In my opinion, Charles Leclerc is up there with one of the best qualifiers across single lap pace on that grid. And he's got, brilliant company for people like Max Verstappen, who's also up there. So I think that he's maximising every last drop of performance that car can get. And to be able to get P2, I think at the end of that weekend, I thought was stellar. And I don't think, this sounds a bit nasty, but I didn't feel the Ferrari deserved to be in P2 with their current run of form. So I think that tells you on the day, a driver can make the difference, and Charles really made the difference today.
I back it, to be fair.
Well, I was going to say Charles was my pick for Grand Prix. Because of those same reasons. I think he did an incredible race. I think he was very fast. And although Norris was faster than him and he managed to qualify in pole position, Charles still did a very, very good job, and it was at his home race. And yes, he was a bit disappointed with the results at the end, but now I get it. I get the pressure behind him and the whole background of it and not having luck on this particular track. But overall, he did a very, very good performance, and I think he would deserve Grand Prix of the week.
Well, to undermine your argument for Carlos Sainz, I am going to give my Grand Prix to Liam Lawson, because I think he played the team game better and he played the team game first. So he obviously spent a lot of time backing up the people behind him for Hadjar to be able to make both of his stops early on, which ultimately meant that Hadjar ended up getting P6. And in doing so, was also able to score himself P8. And it was his first time getting points, and I think we just need to celebrate him.
No, I think it was, what a fucking race to get your first points in F1, Monaco. It's very unlikely for that to be the track that he would have scored points on. And I think that Liam's had a tough time. He has had two teammates this year that are both rather formidable in their own ways, of Max Verstappen and Isaac Hadjar. And
he managed to qualify in the top 10 as well, which is his first time doing so this year. So.
Yeah, I think it's an upturn in performance. But, they must have turned a corner somewhere with that car. But a renewed Liam Lawson. And I thought his driving for the team was very clever. And I think that it must have been a strategy that they talked about previously before the race, because everyone seemed to understand exactly what the motive was.
So are you putting him as your Grand Prix as well?
No.
Oh. So who is the Grand Prix?
Never let them guess your next move. I'm putting Isaac Hadjar forward.
Okay.
Today he finished in P6. That is his best career finish for both Liam Lawson and for Isaac Hadjar. Now, I do think Liam Lawson has done a stellar job today. However, Isaac Hadjar has been raising eyebrows and keeping people on that timing screen looking at him since he started in Formula One. He obviously had a difficult start to Formula One, where he got a DNS, did not start for Australia as he crashed on the formation lap. He was very upset, and he had Helmut Marko basically being like, stop crying, which is very unsympathetic. But since then, he has been on a run of form that has been really rather impressive to see. In a car that started off looking mightier than the Red Bull, but he's continued to impress. And out of 8 races, he's scored points in 4, which I think is actually really rather impressive. Yeah. And today, yes, he got a huge amount of help from his teammate of Liam Lawson, and he did actually give him a shout out both in the post-race interview but also on the team radio, and said big thank you to Liam. But where Williams were like, oh, we don't like to be the nasty guys, we don't want to do that, Racing Bulls were like, fuck it, we want to fucking get points. We're going to go in there, we're going to mix things up, we're going to be the villains, and you know what, we're going to look epic doing so. So hold this can of Red Bull, we're going racing. So I kind of I mean, it's not the way you want to see racing going in Monaco. However, when you see it get done as brilliantly as that, and it's executed by drivers like Isaac Hadjar, my God, does he make it look good.
We're divided.
Okay, do we then potentially say that Racing Bulls are the Grand Prix?
Ooh.
I'd be into that.
I thought you were going to say, do we make a Grand Prix? I'm down for Racing Bulls being the Grand Prix of the week, because you have to maximise opportunities when it's there, when you're in the midfield and your car might not be performing at tracks that you expect it to. When you have a car that is compliant and is razzing it round circuits, you've got to expose it. And I thought that they did that beautifully today. So yeah, Grand Prix.
Okay, cool. And then who are we going to say, therefore, for our Grand?
Do we do Charles Leclerc?
Charles Leclerc!
So you said Leclerc, I said
Leclerc for my Grand Prix.
Oh, okay.
I said Leclerc for my Grand.
Yeah, there you go then. I guess that's that. Sorry,
Okay.
George, I tried.
No one was on your side. And then Tsunoda for Prick.
Yes.
Okay, so the podium stands as Prick is Yuki Tsunoda, Grand is Charles Leclerc, and Grand Prix is the team that Yuki Tsunoda got promoted from, Racing Bulls. Yikes.
How the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, legit. They didn't see that coming. Well, it was to Monaco we went, but we are now Monacoing from Monaco. Did that work?
No.
You gotta try these things.
Why don't you just do it as Mickey Mouse for the partnership?
Okay. Oh, ho there! That was the Monaco Grand Prix episode. We hope you enjoyed. Anyway.
I love that was had no context.
Just watching your face drop as you realised what you had just done.
You know, it's funny. The visions of how I'd come across in this podcast, it's just not panned out for me as I've revealed more about my personality
How did
and
you
sense of
think
humour.
you'd come across?
I thought I'd come across quite demure and quite intelligent. You laugh too hard.
You don't come across as that in life.
Hey!
Yeah.
Says the person who started this week's intro with skibbity.
Very demure, darling. Well, next week we've got
It's even weirder coming from you because you are actually coming across demure and intelligent.
Well, next week we've got the Barcelona Grand Prix.
Ooh.
Are we all excited?
I actually am. Do you know why?
Why?
Why did you take so long to reply?
I thought it was rhetorical.
Can I
Sorry,
guess?
I thought it was rhetorical.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Is it the new regulation stuff?
Yes, it's the technical directive.
Sorry. So
What's wrong, Mickey? Why am I doing Mickey?
I just started doing an outro, and then I was rudely interrupted by Reem, and now she's gone and hijacked my fucking information and said, "Oh, can I guess why we're excited? Is it the new regulations? Fuck you!"
I'm trying to seem informative.
Well, you're stealing information. I have literally given you 10 seconds earlier. The fuck?
I didn't hear it. Step book.
Go along.
There's going to be a technical directive coming into effect in the Barcelona Grand Prix, which is going to affect the amount of flexibility that the wings can have. And rumour has it, much to the hopes of Ferrari and Red Bull, that this should hamper the amount of performance that the McLaren will be able to have over the field. So what they are hoping for is that it will close the gap and have an even closer battle as we see the P2 slot getting hotly contested for across 3 teams. That was beautifully said.
Well
Sorry.
done.
It was, but I'm sulking.
Okay, there's no need for that. Listen, if you've enjoyed all of this chaos, excitement, informative nonsense and analysis, then please go ahead and follow us on X, Instagram, YouTube and TikTok as we post a lot of fun stuff. And we work full time, so we do all of this in our spare time. So
But also,
just,
get involved with conversation. Talk to us.
yes, please do.
We're nice
we don't
people.
Bite. We don't bite. Anyway, on top of that, breaking news for those that are intensely interested on whether getting a 5-star review does in fact help us. Someone gave us a 5-star review.
We
Please-
need more data. We need more. I hate to sound greedy, but when is it going to change the algo?
Yes, so much like an F1 team, we need to have more data points and sensors to be able to figure out whether it correlates to the wind tunnel, to the track. So if you could keep giving us 5-star reviews, the results will be in later this year.
But also someone did leave a comment on Spotify on our last episode, so thank you very much if you're still listening at this point of this episode. We're glad you enjoy our podcast.
Yes, we actually genuinely are. So we leave you with this. Points mean
Prizes.
good God, Nav, why are you staying silent?
Look, Reem's the one on test here, not me.
Oh,